on the sustainability of research careers. And before I introduce the session and briefly and the panelists, I just want to say please feel free to ask questions at the end. We're making sure that there's a Q&A at the end. So do take notes. And yeah, so the idea of this session is to really look at what we mean by sustainable careers, which is really about the instability and the unclarity sometimes of what is a research career. And this is important for a researcher themselves because it's their, how to continue in it. So for their own personal reasons, but also for science, right? Because as maybe some of you heard talk by Peter Gluckman yesterday on the fact that the quality of science is important as well when you have a sustainable research career, allowing for good science to be produced. And of course, there are many obstacles to what a research career are. I mean, as many of you probably know. I do want to take on to what was the opening ceremony yesterday, opening session of the conference yesterday, that was introduced by Carlo Moraes of the cabinet of the Commissioner of Maria Gabriel, on the manifesto that was given by the Initiative for Science in Europe, on the sustainable research careers. So I would like to open the session now on this particularly, and maybe ask Martin Andler to comment. Maybe let me actually introduce you guys. So first, right next to me here, we have Ghazal Gheshnizjani, who's the co-founder and executive director of the Supernova Foundation, which is an online mentoring program for particularly young women and gender minorities who want to pursue a career in physics. She's also professor and chair of women in the mathematics department at the University of Waterloo in Canada. Right next to Ghazal is Joana Moscoso, who's the co-founder and co-director of Chaperone. So this is an online platform that gives options for professional and personalized career development for scientists. She also obtained her PhD from Imperial College London and founded Native Scientists, which is a non-profit organization that connects children, especially from underserved backgrounds, with scientists to promote scientific literacy. Martin Andler is the president of the Initiative for Science in Europe, which is an organization that advocates for science. MCAA is a member of ISC. And he's also an emeritus professor of mathematics at the Laboratoire de Mathématiques de Versailles. Joining us online is Mattias Bjornmalm, the Secretary General of CESAR. It's a European association of more than 50 research-intensive universities of science and technology. He was also an honorary research fellow at the Bionic Institute and invited member of the World Economic Forum. He was also the vice chair of the policy working group of the MCAA. So to start, I would like to ask Martin to maybe talk about the manifesto that was given to Commissioner Gabriel January, actually, just last month, and maybe also highlight one of the points that was mentioned in the manifesto about a monitoring of working conditions of scientists and at a European level.
Hello, thank you for inviting me here. So very briefly, this manifesto that was published last September. It's the outcome of a process which started a bit more than a year ago, launched by Jean-Pierre Bourguignon, who wrote an opinion on the fact that he was worried about the impact of the COVID crisis on early researchers' careers in a massive way, and we don't know exactly what's going on. That's one of the issues. We do not know whether the COVID crisis is having an impact on the number of people going into PhD, finishing their PhDs, or continuing in research after their PhDs. There are indications that maybe yes, maybe no. maybe in some countries. So this is one of the issues. Well, we'll come back to that. So anyway, IAC supported Jean-Pierre Bourguignon's call. It led to the organization of a conference in Brussels last June, and then to the writing of this manifesto, which was published in September. And this manifesto meets the preoccupation of the Commission, and especially of Maria Gabriel, the Commissioner, because she wants to make the issue of early career researchers one of the main tasks of, one of the main goals of the remaining now 16 months of her mandate as a Commissioner. Well, we know, of course, that, the situation for early career researchers has been mediocre for a long, long time. Precarity, all of these things have been discussed at length. It varies from one country to the other. There are countries which are devoting quite a bit of money to research, but still early researchers' careers are very mediocre. There are some countries which devote very little money to research, and then as a consequence, the careers of researchers are mediocre at every level. There are other issues. It's not just stability. There's also working conditions. We know, and this has been studied quite extensively, that a lot of early career researchers, are suffering from mental breakdowns or mental difficulties. Well, maybe older researchers also. And there's also lots of issues about the relationship between the PhD candidates and their advisors, doctoral schools, you name it, everything is complicated. One important issue, of course, is the fact that a lot of people getting PhDs eventually will not end up having academic careers, and we have to see how this transition is organized. Sometimes it's voluntary, people get their PhD and they don't want to stay in academia, and sometimes it's involuntary. They would like to stay in academia, and it doesn't work for many, many reasons. But of course, I'm a mathematician. I can count, supposedly. The number of people getting PhD is much bigger than the number of people who eventually will get into academia. So one way or the other, a number of people will not go into academic careers, and the issue is, how to organize it. And one thing that hopefully we can discuss today is should this fact transform the way that PhD programs are organized or not?
Right. So I guess the working conditions that we're imagining also, they're touched upon when we talk about these kinds of issues, in terms of options for early career researchers, in terms of if they want to stay in academia, but also if they want to look into other options. So it's kind of touching on mentoring as well, right? Looking about how we can give guidance to early career researchers, which is actually another topic that's important in this session, where we have mentoring, I would say, experts here, who can tell us maybe a bit more about how we can help guide researchers who want to stay in academia, need to be guided on how to stay, and then if they want to look into other options, how is that also possible? Maybe I can ask Ghazal to start first.
Maybe I should give a little bit of background. The Supernova Foundation that Dureen mentioned, it's been a learning experience for me, at least. It came out of necessity. It's grassroots movement among the researchers because we saw a need for infrastructure that wasn't there. We didn't have it in physics, and I'm sure in other, pretty much other fields as well. So the story is me, Valeria, and a couple of other colleagues. We were going to these Mauritius workshops, and we could see, and we saw it in experience, that we do see undergraduate students who are very motivated. They like to continue their careers in or studies, not necessarily staying in academia, but at least to the next stages. but there was an imbalance between the male participants and female participants and those who stay, and like most of them. At that point, we realized that apparently all the females were dropping out and they were not carrying. So it came out of this necessity that what can we do to mitigate, to address that issue, the few of us with no funding. So a grassroots initiative that maybe at least we can connect some of these with some other people who have gone through this path and have some experience and equip them. And this is something that, I mean, again, goes back to science diplomacy and policy. We would like, ideally, for these issues to be addressed from top. There should be this tool set that prepares students how to they stay in academia or go to industry. They have the training, but it's not there. So that's where the mentoring comes into place. I can tell you, like, from our experience, and again, we didn't have the experience right away, but we learned along the way, that there's a lot that can be done. There's a lot of strategies that we can equip the students, and even at higher stages of their career, postdocs, and even junior faculties, if we connect them to someone who has been a little through that path, from very simple things like, how do you, and this came up with some discussions at dinner last night, and I thought I mentioned it, like, very basic thing is when I get emails from undergraduate students that we want to come to your program, how you write that email itself plays a big role, whether you get into, like, you make the connection to the institute, you make the connection to the right group or not. And this is something that, for example, mentoring, we try to provide to our mentees. We put webinar, or we connect them to the mentors to at least give them some of these tools and skill sets. How do you prepare your cover letter? How do you write your research statement? And all of these tools that came up in the morning as well. The trainings that are not in the institutions at the moment. So the next best thing that we can do is maybe through mentoring, if we connect people, especially not only people who are in European or North American or first-class institution, but all over the world, like in India, in Africa. As long as we can connect them, we give them these tools to apply.
And yeah, so through these mentoring programs, you're putting people in touch with other people, so researchers with other researchers, but also, I guess there's a need to talk about how to do the next steps, for example, in terms of funding, in terms of how to find, how to write a grant, how to do all these things. And maybe, Joana, you can talk about how the platform that you co-founded, so Chaperone, how are researchers using that? How is it helping them? To develop their careers? I mean, what are the options that they have on such a platform?
Yeah, sure.
Hello, is working? Good. I apologize for my voice. I'm starting to have a cold. So a little bit like you were saying, Chaperone also started from our own experiences. Pedro and I, we were two postdoctoral researchers on our second or third postdoc, and together we worked in more than 12 countries in the world across 3 different continents. And at some point you realize that we were both really frustrated about the fact that everywhere we went in academia we saw the same kind of discourse. Oh, my PhD is a nightmare. Oh my, like just a lot of complaining about toxic environments, bad supervision, uncertainty about the future, and so on. So we said we need to do something about it. And we started reading a lot about career development. And so we, after reading a lot and interviewing, we interviewed more than 30 people, experts in career development, scientists, director of institutions, and so on. We concluded that it was indeed something that the scientific community needed to have more personalized support in planning and managing their careers. And we concluded that mentoring was not the only solution available. In career development, there are 5 different types of support you can get. The supervision, which I think the scientific community knows very well, then the mentoring, then the career advice, the career counseling, and the career coaching. And even, I think I really want to stress this, which is, I think as scientists are not making the right interpretation of the word mentoring. We use the word mentoring to address anything in career development, and it should be the other way around. We should use the words career development to refer to help in management and planning of the career, and recognize that mentoring is just one of the forms that is available to us to help us in our careers. And I'm happy to dig deeper into the differences between the 5 if the audience is interested, but I will follow on this. Also, another thing is that I think most of us tend to think that career development is important just to help us improve our well-being and improve our work-life balance. But actually, career development is also very important for productivity, because if we don't have holistic approach to our career and the integration of our career with the rest of our life, not only we can put at risk our mental health, we can also put at risk our productivity, right? Because if we don't feel fulfilled and empowered and confident about what we are doing with our professional life, then productivity can also be affected.
Thank you, because actually, yes, this is important to define what we mean by mentoring and really dig deep into what options exist for mentoring. I have to say, for me, one of the critical points of my PhD was really knowing if I was a good scientist. I needed to know if I was a good scientist, and I don't know if I was getting that reassurance or that criticism or that, the motivation. And just to move on to Mattias, because he was also an author of a declaration that was written by the MCAA and Eurodoc on sustainable careers. And in the declaration, there's, of course, several points, and one of them is mentoring as well, and transferable skills, which also Martin mentioned about how do we do the transferable skills guidance. So maybe, Mattias, I can ask you to comment on these points that you mentioned in the declaration.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon from me as well. Of course, the declaration was in 2018, so I don't remember all the details offhand, but I do warmly welcome what we have, the fellow panelists here, the contributions that we've seen so far. Of course, what we've seen with the ongoing efforts on the European level when it comes to changing the conditions and the framework conditions, funding conditions, all of these are crucial enablers. And as many of you perhaps know, in my current role working with CSER Association and its universities, this is a key point of what we're working towards. But I very much also welcome the last contribution from Joana talking about taking charge of your own career. So this point, and I think this is a really an enabling and empowering approach to assume agency around your own career, acknowledging that there is no one path, I think can be very freeing, and giving yourself multiple interests here, both inside and outside academia, helps give you this agency. And I myself was a Marie Curie Fellow, of course, and spent many years with some type of implicit and some type of explicit assumption that professorship was the right path, or part of this was others imparting that on me as well. But I realized that, of course, there are multiple different paths, and I actively pursued different paths. If you would have asked me 10 years ago if I would now be the Secretary General of CSER, this was never the designed goal. Advocacy, and which is what my main job is now, was one of the few routes that I was passionate about. And for various reasons, it took me now into this role. So I really like to emphasize and reiterate my full support for the assuming agency type of approach, where you design and become in charge of your own career path by refusing basically to have others telling you what's the right way for you and having a few different options always up your sleeve. And in parallel, of course, working hard together with the broader community, and the Marie Curie Alumni Association has, of course, been very vocal and very good here to change the conditions around to, again, empower researchers to pursue a range of different career paths. So thank you very much for the introduction.
So yeah, I mean, the thing is indeed, I mean, we need to be aware of things around us. And this is a question that I wanted to give the panel as well, is researchers do have a lot on their plate in terms of doing science, the things that they go through. I mean, not just science research, it comes with a lot of things, of course. So is it their job to, is it their, I mean, do they have to ask for these tools, the support? Of course, they need to be active if they really have a clear idea, but then, or this is their personality maybe, but then, yeah, I would like to address the question of the role of researchers in asking for sustainable careers, maybe. Please, yeah, go ahead.
Well, maybe I'm a bad student, so I never answer the questions directly, but well, I'm still am a bad student. The thing, what is very specific in a PhD training is a PhD program is that you do a thesis, you write papers, you become an independent researcher, you ultra specialize into what you're doing, because that's what science is about. Whether it's social science or humanities, you focus on a very narrow goal, and you do it for a while, and the fact that you've been successful at doing it is exactly what you get out of it, this extra competence of having been able to carry something through. If we ask at the same time the graduate, I mean the PhD candidates, to do lots of other things, it will interfere with this first goal. So it might actually diminish the impact of getting the PhD. So I think that this is an issue that one must really be concerned about, because if we say, well, the PhD candidate must, in addition, do all of these things, then they will not have time to, to do this. Of course, there is a solution that, as a former advisor, I recommend strongly, is graduate students, PhD students, work more than 100 hours per week, and then they have time to do everything. But I'm not sure that you would necessarily agree with that point of view.
So I think actually career planning and management comes first and is a given. Your science is a result of what you want for your professional life, right? So it's almost like, for me, this is not even a question, because it's when you reflect on what you want for your professional life that you get this sense of direction. Yes, I want to do a PhD. Yes, I want to do a postdoc. Yes, I want to go after that senior lecturer position. If you don't do the self-reflection, or you don't find the support you need to be able to figure this out, then the uncertainty of the system, your own uncertainty, will add to the uncertainty of the system. So it's going to be uncertainty to the square meter, to the cube. And so, for me, the career planning and management is the starting point. You need to know what you want. That you eliminate the uncertainty coming from inside you, and then you just need to deal with the uncertainty coming from the outside. And then it depends, so the amount of time that it takes to career plan and career manage. It doesn't have to be something you do on a weekly basis. It doesn't have to be something that you think of actively every month. It can be every quarter, every 3 months, or every 6 months, depending in what stage of the career you are, or maybe even sometimes every year. Really depends on the career stage that you are in at that time. And doesn't have to take a lot, and actually it can save you a lot of frustration and time in doing stuff. Because maybe some part of the career development you get is how to write the manuscript. Maybe if you learn how to write the manuscript, you avoid losing 20 hours in writing your first manuscript and not serving its purpose. So maybe getting career development is just a way to make you more efficient.
Yeah, maybe Ghazal, and then Mattias, I saw your hand, so we'll go right after to you.
Yeah, something I want to say, it's a bit provocative, and if somebody told me 20 years ago, maybe I would have rolled my eyes, is that sometimes we forget the purpose we want a career. We switch it with our more prior thing in life, which is being happy and being healthy. We want the career to keep us happy and not the other way around. We don't want our career to be main goal, no matter how miserable. So I think always keeping that perspective, and again, going back to your point, having that reflection helps you to remember what you want to do next. Don't put the goal on that's my advice, and I might be wrong. Don't put the career itself as your end goal in life. Keep why you need that career. And then I don't think it's their job, the young researcher, to worry about some of them. I think it's the policymakers and people they're in academia or industry to address some of these issues. Unfortunately, I do see that we do have problem, and I think we are all aware of it, that we don't address the wellness of the researchers in academia and maybe in the industry as well. I just give this example because it came a few months ago. I saw postdoctoral researchers posting on Twitter that, oh, I see all of my friends from high school and college are now settled and have a happy life, and I'm still doing a postdoc. I don't have a job, permanent job yet, and so on. And then people were responding, well, don't worry, but you have a PhD and you're a scientist. And it upset me because I said, no, that's not right. She deserves as a scientist to also have a settled life and be happy. Don't mix up these things. It's a problem for us that academia that cannot provide both at the same time. Now, as a pragmatic person, while we try to address that, I feel like we can, again, come up with how to deal with the symptoms. We have the problem at hand. How do we address it for specific individuals? And the advice might not be unique for everybody. Like there's no size fit one size fits all, right? So we have to, again, mentoring in this case is also helpful. I keep bringing that up because then you talk to individuals and see what's best for them in their career development or what makes them happy. Yeah.
Mattias?
No, thank you very much. And I have to also reflect on the contributions we had here now. First, of course, I agree with a lot of what Martin said in the very beginning, but I do have to acknowledge or perhaps recall together that no one, if we're honest with ourselves, no one has time. All of us take time. And I think it was a mindset for myself, switching, trying to get out of this, I don't have time to do this or don't have time to do that. It always boils down to I prioritize or I choose to do something else. And I encourage all of you here listening in or engaging with the conversation in the room as well to consider yourself when you use the wordings around I don't have time to do this or I don't have time to do that, to challenge yourself and say, is it true that you don't have time, or are you choosing to do something else? And if you're choosing to do something else, is it because you're doing it, or is it because someone else is pushing you? Is your professor implying you should do this and you're letting them do that on your behalf, or are you choosing to spend your time in this way? I recognize this comes from a quite privileged perspective, which I share with many of you in the room here, of course, that are postdocs or PhD students or so, and there are people in the world who, for different reasons, cannot choose how they spend their time and what they focus their time on. But many of us actually do have that privilege, so I encourage you to consider this always to help also in the assuming of agency and taking up an active role in your own destiny in the very foundational sense. Secondly, I like the last contribution here, and I really like to emphasize the challenge of if we outsource who is going to make things better to the elusive policymaker or the elusive external people, I think we lose a lot of the control. We lose a lot of the direction here. And I strongly encourage what's, of course, many before me have called active citizenship. And this is in everything we do, be it in society, if there are wrongs or things that needs to be better in society, but also within academia. And it can start, and I encourage especially young researchers who are interested in this area to assume active citizenship in the role. Are there groups at your university? Are there students' unions when you are students? Are there other type of groupings when you are a PhD student or postdoc? This is, to me, how you affect real change, by engaging and helping these organizations and things that exist. The Marie Curie Alumni Association is one good example here. I'm not saying everybody should do everything. I'm just saying that we should carefully think about where do we choose to spend our time and for what reason. And if we're not the ones designing and shaping how things will be in the future and allowing someone else to do that on our behalf, I think that can create a lot of challenges and unintended consequences. So that's why I always encourage a constructive and as agency and engagement also from the very junior parts of our researchers. Thank you very much, Dureen.
Thank you, Mattias. So indeed, yes, I mean, reflecting on, as a young researcher, reflecting on why you're doing the next step and yeah, what you want out of it is really important. And I think in this conversation, just to kind of try to wrap it up, to move to something else, but it's the fact that also, if you want to stay in academia, the fact is that they are short-term contracts, and this is something that comes with the conditions of a career of a young researcher. And this is something that is quite important, right? Because it is an impact on why you're choosing the next steps, whether you really love research and you love other things, or you really are passionate about research. So maybe, yes, funding is something that we can maybe touch upon because we do have the time. So maybe we can talk about this as well. Can I ask Joana to start?
Yes. Sorry. Can you just repeat the question again? Because I was thinking.
So funding and how the fact that we do have short-term projects, and how do we target this if we were to think about the fact that we are asking researchers to think about their careers as they progress?
I think to be aware of these characteristics of a research career is very important, so that not only you prepare adequately for it, so that you, for instance, know how to write the applications and know the opportunities that are around you and so on, how to search for those opportunities, so that you have the information and the skill that is required to get those fundings is important. And then also that once you get this funding and you get these opportunities, you are able to make the most out of it, right? And here again, we come back to time management and working in a smart way. Because sometimes to work 100 hours a week might sound like you are a hard worker, but I think the key is to work in an efficiently manner and in a smart way, right? So that you make the most out of every hour that you give to science. And yes, I don't know if this answered the question. And then I think also when we budget for our projects to get the funding, again here I think we should not be shy to not only forecast money for doing the research, but also to forecast money for career support, for dissemination of the project and its results, science communication, and as we were discussing in the previous session in this room, also for maybe translation of your outputs to other languages. Indeed, I have a friend who says, when you are a scientist, it's like playing football, but you are the 11 players. You need to be the goalkeeper, you need to be the one scoring the goals, you need to be the ones in the middle of the field, you need to fill all the positions. It's true, like even applying for funding and getting your own funding. It is true, it's highly demanding job that requires a wide variety of skills and sometimes can feel very overwhelming. But if we look at these from a sense of abundance rather than a sense of scarcity and uncertainty, if we look at these from a place of abundance, you look at these and you think, wow, this never gonna be a boring day, you know? Like I will be able to develop lots of skills that can be transferred to lots of other different professional futures. So.
Maybe Marta, I can ask you to also continue and comment on the fact that indeed, like the funding in itself, as it is today, you can adapt to it, but you can also say that it's too short for what we aspire for a scientific project.
Well, yeah, I mean, on all of these issues, there are, two completely different perspectives. I mean, things being what they are, funding, short-term funding, precarity, then you're dealing with people, men, women, and you have to help them find their way with those conditions. And then a completely different thing, you want to change the conditions, and it's sort of two different perspectives. It is absolutely clear that the short-term projects is a plague for quality research. Even one could argue, and actually in France a lot of people argue just against project funding, that funding should come with a position, with a stability, and not be based on projects. I don't think that everybody would agree with that, but one should ask this question. I think short-term funding is a disaster. But on the other hand, if I think about this individual perspective, how do you do in those conditions? I think it's very important that if you're an early career researcher, especially a doctoral student, that you are empowered to be the manager, at one point to become the manager of your own project. And this is how you're going to acquire transferable skills without sort of being diverted from your main focus. What is another disaster is when the PI uses the doctoral students sort of as technicians who do what the PI wants them to do and does not leave them the room to grow into becoming their own managers. And of course, if you can argue at the end of your PhD or a few years later that you were a project manager which was doing research, then you have these transferable skills and this competence that will get you, the possibility to get different kinds of jobs. So this, I would really argue in favor of including the transferable skills precisely as an empowerment of early career researchers as being their own managers and not just sort of a kind of employee of a PI.
Can I add to that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, again, also it's a balance. Like I do see, for example, the short-term contract could help with that to make the transition from working under supervision into your own researcher and gaining all those skills. But, and you can correct me, but as you point out, I feel like we have gone too far. Now it's become an exploitation. Like if we are offering one person too many short-term projects or there are too many, that means there is a job there that a long-term researcher could be doing, and we are trying to probably save funding by like putting it in these short-term fundings, which are often cost much less, and this way, so it's not the long-term solution. We have to I think, address that. And I know in many institutions, it is actually, they are aware of it. And they, one other aspect that ties into inclusivity that is often, I see at least in North America, these are mostly are women who are taking this because of other situation, they're taking it. So it also produces the wage gap and so other things that fits into it.
Yeah. Mattias, if you wanted to say something before I give the chance for questions.
Yes, on the sustainable funding, of course, this is a key enabler when it comes to advancing this area. And I'm firmly convinced, and I think the evidence is quite overwhelming, that having a balance here between long-term funding and short-term funding is good for the community. Long-term providing this type of stability to pursue high-risk and long-term projects, and the short-term funding is to create vibrancy and flow of people and flow of ideas. So both needs to be. And of course, the people who make these final decisions is typically political level or funding agencies. So these are the key actors we need to work together with. But internally, I also am interested if there are those in the room here who know what the numbers are at their own institution. Of those who do research full time, how many are on short-term contract and how many are on long-term contract? These type of numbers are not that easy to get a hold of. They're not very public. And in some places, they are not even gathered or monitored. So when you talk to a finance minister, or even a prime minister, and says, hey, we need more long-term funding and less focus on this short-term one, they ask, okay, so what's the numbers now? If we don't have an answer, it's very easy for them to not act. And then if they ask, so what's a reasonable balance? Again, if we don't have any type of evidence to build this up and what the situation is now, it's very easy for someone who is exceedingly busy, like a finance minister or prime minister, to just brush this to the side. So for us, I think it's important to be vocal internally in our own universities and our communities. And those of you who are part of, again, student unions, postdoc groupings, and so that have engagement with your leadership to ask these questions and see, can we build this evidence base together? What are the numbers? What is the data? What is it telling us towards having an informed and evidence-based discussion around what is the right balance here, which may depend on context, location, culture, country, etc. But I think it starts with, and really helpful if we have that evidence base in place. Thank you, Dureen.
Thanks, Mattias. It's also a new vision for me, I have to say. So Monica, you raised your hand. Maybe you can ask the question.
Thank you very much. No, I have to push. Okay, that's it. Sorry, I understood the contrary of it. Okay, I think Mattias is right, and that's why we propose to put in place an observatory so that there is a continuing monitoring of how the situation is, so that the decision makers, wherever they are, political and also in our research institutions and companies, have evidence on which to build the future and to consolidate the careers for researchers. But something very different I wanted to say is that I'm observing in this conference that very often the discussions ongoing are about how to compose with how it works in research. That means, how can I combine my little contracts, my short contracts, so that I build a continuity? And I really believe you should a little bit change the logic. You told this example of my colleagues, my friends from school all have a position, except me, who am a scientist, but I have the PhD. You have to raise the voice. You have to say that we in science should also be recognized as a full profession. There is no other, I think there is no other profession where you have this long period where you study, longer period where you are a first postdoc, a second postdoc, and sometimes you call it postdoc, but in fact these are not really a 3 years or 4 years postdoc, but a 6 plus 6 plus whatever. So you have to raise the voice and say there must be a reflection in Europe about in the world, in fact, because this is international, I mean global, to have a recognition that doing science is also a profession. I mean, there are so many people, the number of researchers is really increasing these last years in Europe, and there is really now an urgent need to do something. We are discussing this since tens of years, and I think this is very opportune, and that's why Martin called you all to sign this manifesto, because there is a windows of opportunity. There is a commissioner at place for the moment. The term is very short because mid next year there will be a new commission, and possibly she will not be there or not have the same portfolio. This nobody knows. So we have to use her will to do something. It's now, today, tomorrow, this week, in the coming months, where we can raise the voice. You can raise the voice because we can help you, but you are the people concerned today.
Thank you, Monica.
I want to comment on that because actually, in a way, things are already happening. Almost on a monthly basis now, there are news in science and in career and nature accounting for this problem that groups want to hire postdocs and they open the positions for several months and they don't have candidates. So people are already saying no to these conditions and speaking up, right? Of course, there's still a long way to walk. But I think in a way people already realize that these are precarious conditions and they do not fit the way I want to live my life. So I can say no. And maybe, before we didn't see these as much.
Indeed, they are seeing that there are not as many postdocs as there used to be applying. So there is starting to be an awareness of this. Lene, your question or comment?
Thank you. First, a disclaimer. I'm a policy officer at the Commission, so I don't have the same lived experiences that you all have as a researcher. So just take this into account with my comment. But I think transferable skills are the skills of tomorrow for scientists and for any other profession. So I think this is not only a problem or a question for scientists, it's a question for anybody that we will probably have different careers in our life. So I think that's important to remember, that we need to take the time, as Mattias was saying, to take agency, to take control of our own career by developing these transferable skills. There was a study that came out from DD Research a year or two ago that asked PhD students, how many of you would like to have a career in academia afterwards? And I think it's around 2/3 said yes. And then if you look at the statistics, it's 15% staying. And so many leave involuntarily and unprepared, because as you all have said, during the PhD, you're not being prepared for a career outside academia. So I think, from my point of view, again, the disclaimer, I haven't your lived experiences, there needs to be something during the PhD that prepares you for a career outside, because most will actually end up outside academia, but you, as it is currently, you're ending up not on your own conditions, but you're ending up there because that's where there is a job. And then my last point is that at the Joint Research Center where I worked, we looked into this, into non-academic careers, and particularly career in policy. And we then have developed this competency framework on science for policy. So basically, what are these transferable skills that you need if you work outside, if you work in policy? And then just this week, we came out with a self-reflection tool. So basically helping you to, it's not a performance assessment, it just helps you to reflect, okay, if I work outside academia in policy somehow, what are then the competences that I need and how can I get there? Because the tool includes tips on how to get there, but most importantly, resources. So online trainings, guides, how to write a policy brief or something, not online resources from the Commission, only far from many different sources. But I think my main point is this, like for any other profession, even though, as you said, science is not a profession, yet transferable skills are the skills of tomorrow, and we need to factor that in. Thanks.
Yeah, so Monica's gonna ask her question next, but I just want to add that I'm finding it very interesting because it seems that we're talking a lot about transferable skills, but transferable skills to continue in academia, and then also to find other options. So it's really a way of thinking about what we mean by transferable skills. Monica, please go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to react because yes and no. Of course, it's important, and many universities are doing that to now build into a certain level of trainings, how to prepare the people they are training for other professions and so on. But the issue I was addressing is a bit different. I mean, it's good that we can help those people having had a PhD who don't want to continue research to do something else and to prepare them. But there is an issue about recognizing the profession of a scientist as a profession like if you were whatever else, a lawyer, I don't know, entrepreneur, whatever else. I have no good ideas now. But there is an issue about recognizing that if you have done a PhD, which is already a very long training and a very heavy diploma to obtain, that as from the day after, you can get a real job. And you are not in this strange period which can last 10, 15 years sometimes, depending on the domains and on the country where you are and on your path and so on. We are still a young researcher. You're still a young researcher with 40, 50 years. This doesn't happen nowhere else. You understand what I mean? So there is this issue of recognizing and putting in place a real career path in terms of I want to do research and there is a way to do it around Europe at least. I don't know if I was clear with what I wanted to say, but I hope so.
Can we pass the microphone to the gentleman there? And maybe if there's someone from the panelists who wants to react.
Okay, so I'd like to add a comment from my personal experience regarding exactly this career question. So there was like around about 15 to 20 years ago when people came back from a postdoc that they did in the US, going back to, in this case it was Germany, but it doesn't matter. And then they were put into industry as trainees. So gaining roughly a little bit less than they were gaining doing the PhD before, and so on. So basically, the industry did not cooperate either with research careers. Their opportunities in academia were very slim. Anyhow, so they've always been like this. It obviously didn't change very much. And well, I went abroad. I'm in Brazil for 15 years now. I got a permanent position there in research and so on. I was lucky with that. But this was a unique opportunity. And so many people won't have that. So I think it's a very complicated issue. And sometimes I would say it has to be addressed even earlier. Students who start at a university should know the options that they will have for the future. In the beginning of the university, during the graduation, they should already, of course they don't know what they want to do. I see this all the time in Brazil. The students that go to a university, they do something they find it's interesting and so on and so on. They are actually mostly very engaged. But they don't know which opportunities they will have after graduation. Let's say master, PhD, okay, but then they slide through this and then they are lost completely. And if they were to know before already which options they had, they might have made different choices. Like one of you said, oh, well, I see all my friends happy with this and that and their life and so on. People made different choices because of the information they had available or so. And I think maybe changing that already very early might help. In Brazil, it has started that students who are engaged and interested in high school already, they can join research lab. I've had students in their last 2 years of school, and this was helping them to decide what they would like to do. We discussed, of course, far beyond science, we discussed everyday life. I've got a permanent position at the age of 42. This might not be everyone's career goal, but it's something that people should know more.
So yeah, we're getting the fact that we do need to know more, but it's either us who have to go, I mean the young researchers who have to go get out this information, or it should be somehow given to the young researchers. So maybe I just let the panel, if you want to react or end in a statement, since we're on time.
There is one model that actually University of Waterloo has, and it's at undergraduate level, and we are trying to implement it at master's level, which I found very nice. We call it a co-op program. So students, as soon as when they're in the co-op program from very early on, like undergrad, it mixes studies with work terms. So you work or study for 2 terms, and then you interview, go in industry or a research lab and work for a few months, and then come back and study and the next co-op again until it's longer term. But what I found very useful is that a lot of students by the end of their undergraduate degree have made up their mind. They have an idea what it means to work in industry, what it means to work in research, what kind of research they like. They like to be in a computational lab versus experimental. And I think now we are trying to see if we can do it at master's level, but that's one solution. It might not be the solution, but one way I can see it. We are also implementing more and more the connection with our alumni who have gone to industry, to our PhD students, because it is very eye-opening. Like, we have very good students who were very good researchers and they moved on to industry, and they are like, oh, we didn't know it's actually as satisfying as the problem-solving aspect of the thing that I'm doing in this company. A lot of things that I thought was only for scientists, I am doing the same things in this company. Or even nowadays, a lot of them have a specific research unit who are doing science. So even if you go there, you're not in academia, but that can be addressed. But yeah, I agree. It's very necessary that we prepare PhD students as well for that.
I think so. When we are 100% sure that we want to have a career in academia and do all the way through, I think more or less everyone knows what they need to do, right? Bachelor, master's, PhD, a postdoc, a few years of, well, this not a very long postdoc, and eventually you get a position, a senior lecturer position, become a professor. So it's actually quite well defined. And maybe Martin had the experience that he was able to become a lecturer very early in his career, right? It used to be like that. And I think that some people go into academia believing that things still work. How many years ago? Like they worked.
Many years.
I think there is this expectation that things have not changed, and they have changed a lot. And they are still changing, and I see some positive changes around me. In the 15 years of professional life that I have, in the beginning, the people, and even myself, when I started my career in science, I had this utopia dream that I would become the group leader, and then I realized that actually maybe it was more complicated than that. And then, when I was more senior, the students would get there and they would look like from downwards, with a lot of respect to me because I was already postdoc and thinking, oh my God, you're a superstar. And actually nowadays, the new students arrive to me and they doing internships and so on. They say, oh, I admire you. I heard it's not easy to have an academic career. So people are already knowing early in their academic journey that actually becoming a scientist is not such pink as people used to think. And so I think change is already happening. And I also see this change based on these stories of people opening 3 times the call for postdocs and closing without any single applicant. Because people have realized that there are better options outside academia. So I think academia needs to think about their future. How am I gonna attract talent? To attract talent, I need to provide good working conditions. And maybe it's not just a clear path that people can easily navigate. Maybe actually universities also have to start thinking about giving benefits like health insurance or support for this and that, because it's a competitive market. Access to information is more than ever, and so if you want to get the best people that there are and you want to retain that talent, you need to fight for it. It's not just a given anymore.
Thank you. Martin and Mattias, if you want to say the last word.
Okay, just maybe one thing. I mean, obviously, there's an issue about precisely this transition, whether, and actually you're right. I mean, right now it's quite possible that people are sort of fleeing away from academic careers because it's becoming too just painful. So lots of intelligent people in the ministries, national ministries, at the commission are saying, well, we have to provide the students, the doctoral students, with the kind of skills that will allow them to do this transition. And indeed, it has to be done. But if it's done against without at least the cooperation of the academics, it's just not going to work. We've had, for 15 years in France, we've had those so-called, I mean, in addition to the, day-to-day work of PhD candidates, they have to take so-called doctoral training sessions. And so they have to do it because it's compulsory. But usually they say that the kind of training that they get is either a nuisance or laughable, and it's taking them away from what they want to do. So if we continue this way, it's just not going to work. I mean, we have to get, in all of these things, we have to build whatever solution we are needed with the academic milieu and not by technocratic decisions coming from abroad, whether it is from the commission or from the university presidents that Mattias represents, or from the ministries, but with the cooperation of the academic milieu. So I'm offering Mattias the possibility of responding immediately to my provocation.
Thank you, Martin. And well, of course, you and I have talked about this before and can talk at length of this, but let me wrap up a bit. And of course, I don't disagree with you here. My key point and what the key message I wanted to convey or hoped I could convey today was around the whole point around assuming agency on this. And on one hand, to me, this is really the changes created by passionate people working together here. You listeners have been fortunate to hear from Dureen, Ghazal, Joana, and Martin here, who are all passionate people and excellent in this area in different ways. And I encourage all of you to be part of changing your environment around you. And if you're new to this, I would suggest you start with joining groups that are close to you. Find like-minded people just around you, be it the student union, the graduate union, or something similar, and start to work together. The second aspect of this to me is to refuse to let others decide for you and without you, implicitly or explicitly. Here it's really about taking charge of your career path and where you spend your time. Acknowledging that there is no one path here, I think, is freeing, and giving yourself multiple options inside and outside academia gives you agency. So with that, I'd like to thank Dureen and my fellow panelists for the discussion. Thank you, Dureen.
Thank you so much, Mattias. Thank you all to the panel. We're a bit later than what we wanted, but it's good to let you go to lunch now to have enough of it. Thank you again to all of you for being here, and thank you to the audience for your presence.
Thank you. Good job.
It's nice because you don't really know where it's going to go.